Hello, this is your favorite Doctor of Education back for another video on education research. So today we will be delving into more data on public, private, and charter school teacher population, student relative to the student race and ethnicity relative to their teacher population, the sex or gender of teachers in this country. All right, so this information is it's basically a nationally representative sample survey of public and private K-12 schools, principals, and teachers. So we're going to be focusing highly on the teachers in the 50 states and the District of Columbia. So it's very important to note that they didn't survey every teacher in America. So this is a sample survey. So it's a representative sample. So it's around some tens of thousands of teachers that were sampled. So it's not, it's just a sample, right? It's not all the numbers of teachers in this country. All right, I'm going to share my screen very quickly, and then let's get started on looking at some of the data. Okay, so we're going to look at the characteristics of public school teachers in this country. So if you notice, there are a lot of women people who identify as women who are in the education field, more in elementary than secondary, as you can see. So we definitely need a lot more teachers who are male, teachers who are non-binary or non-gender conforming. Also, too, it'd be really great to see how these statistics will change if they allow for gender non-conforming or non-binary folks to be polled in this survey. So hopefully they'll have those statistics in the near future. But as you can see, there are more male secondary teachers than in elementary school, but we definitely need a lot more male teachers, so that it's representative of the regular student population. All right, also, so let's look at another graph. So this one is very important because it shows the distribution of teachers in public elementary and secondary schools and percentage of distribution of K through 12 students enrolled in public schools. So this is where you see the disparity between the student population and then the teacher population by race. So if you notice, the darker color is a percentage of teachers and the purple is a percentage of students. So we have an overall preponderance of or representation of white teachers in this country. So do you think that causes an issue where you have more white teachers than students? So the percentage of students in public school is around 46%, but there are 80% of teachers. So you will have students of color going into schools where they may never have a teacher of their racial ethnic background from probably K to 12, depending on their school district. So does that pose a problem? Please write down in the comments if definitely debate that. So if you notice, percentage of students, so we have around almost a third of the public school students are Latino, Hispanic, and they only have 9% of the teachers. Blacks make up 15% of the population of public schools, but only 6% of the teachers. So it's a really overwhelming, also in somewhat decline of in some ways their increase of students, teachers of color, but then also a decline, and retaining them to maybe an issue, but recruiting them to getting them into the field of education. And in Asians, we have a percentage of 2% of teachers, but they make up 5% of the actual student population. And then you see American Indian, Alaska Native. That number, the hashtag, is basically it's a number that it's not necessarily rounds to zero, so it's a very low percentage. So pretty much every racial ethnic group is underrepresented with teachers, but white, but white. Okay, so another thing that we want to look at when we talk about the percentage of teachers in public elementary or secondary schools, a lot of them do have master's degrees, which is good, right? So the majority of teachers in this country have master's degrees or bachelors, right? And then some even have specialists or doctorates. All right, so, but let's look at the comparison between public charter, and private schools. So these numbers are a bit different. So where you see, like I said, with public schools, you see a lot of teachers with master's degrees. But then when you look at public charter and private schools, you don't necessarily see the same. So let's look at some of the statistics with comparing those different populations. So let's look at the percentage distribution of teachers in traditional public charter, and private elementary and secondary schools by race or ethnicity. So if you notice, they're more of a representation of different racial ethnic groups in public charter schools than in traditional public schools than in private schools. So private schools and somewhat are the least diverse, whereas public charters are even more diverse than traditional public. So traditional public, we talked about, isn't really that diverse compared to the population of this country. You see an overwhelming majority of white teachers, right? So, but public charter, we see a lot more representation, especially Hispanic Latino teachers being in public charter schools than in traditional public or private schools. So that's a good thing, right? But why do you think so? Some may argue that charter schools may not have the same restrictions as public schools, traditional public schools, when it comes to certification or degrees. So that's something too to think about. So another thing to just point out, Blacks have the lowest representation in private school teachers. Okay. Also, let's look at the percentage of distribution of teachers in traditional public charter, and private elementary and secondary schools. So let's look at it with the years of full-time and part-time teaching experience. So if you notice also, which is very interesting, rather their age. So we're going to look at by age and years of full-time, part-time teaching experience. So if you notice here, the age, a lot of people in public charter schools are much younger. So if you notice, they're either under 30 or under 39, a lot of them, right? Whereas you find almost diverse distribution in traditional public and more in private school. But in public charter, you definitely see a lot more younger population in that arena. But let's actually look at years of part-time and full-time experience. So if you notice with public charters, they have not that much experience compared to traditional public schools and private schools. So here, for the most part, a majority of their staff, around 56% of their staff, are fairly new teachers, less than 10 years of experience, right? So that also maybe bodes well for some people. So some people may argue that, you don't necessarily need to have tons of experience to work in a school. But the thing is as well with charter schools, that those statistics kind of show that they're not retaining their staff too as well. So there's a high turnover, lack of retention rate with charter schools. And please, I'm sure there's a lot of charter people out there. Tell me why. Tell me why in the comments. Why are you not being retained in charter schools? So let's look at more data. So here, let's look at the percentage of distribution of teachers in traditional public charter, and private elementary and secondary school by highest degree earned. So if you notice here too, public charter, you do have a good amount of people with masters, but a lot of them, more like half of them, have a bachelor's and or less than a bachelor's, right? So whereas in traditional public, you see more of them have a master's, right? And in private, you see half of the population in private schools have just a bachelor's or less than. So we can say they're so-called less educated in public charter and private schools. Okay. And the last chart here is a percentage of distribution of teachers in traditional public charter, elementary and secondary schools by certification. So if you notice also, people in public charter schools have less certification, regular certification, than teachers in traditional public, which is why you may not see as experienced teachers in public charter. And then also too, some may argue, this may not be a correlation, but why we see more of a diverse racial ethnic group in public charters. Not to say, not saying that, racial ethnic groups have, who are non-white, have less certification or less education, but you can see there's more opportunity to be hired if you don't necessarily have a master's degree or a regular teaching license, because you could be an artist, you could be a musician, you could be a scientist, and you didn't major in education, but you have expertise that you're able to get hired in a public charter schools. So these are just some of the statistics when it comes to public charter and private schools in this country. So what we noticed is definitely we need a lot more teachers of color, right? Hands down, we need a lot more teachers of color in the field of education. We need a lot more males. Also, we need some more, folks who may be non-binary, non-gender conforming as well, because we have a growing number of children identifying in that category. So it'd be good for them to see a representation in their schools. But so there's a lot of issues too that arise with this data. So please write down in the comments, what else do you think about this data? And I'm going to share some of these links in the description box. So please come back for another video on education research. This is your favorite Doctor of Education again. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.